No, like this. Okay, here I guess. No, I want my hat. Much better. Hey, welcome to this video. It's gonna be good, I hope. But before I should do anything, I have no training in sewing nor history, so I have no business doing what I'm doing. But as I was planning this project, I did watch a video from Carolina, my main mum, and she said this.
You don't want the first thing you make to be a corset, because that's complicated, but...
I chose not to listen. This is how I made an 1830s inspired, which means not accurate at all. At all. At all. First days. First things first, I chose my fabric. For the outer of my stays, I've chosen this curtain, and for the inner of these stays, I have chosen this bed sheet. Have a look at the grain of your fabric. On the vertical and horizontal, it is very, very strong, and on the diagonal or the bias, it's got a bit of stretch. Cut out your front and back pieces from the grain going vertical and horizontal. And then when we get to our side pieces, we're going to cut them out on the bias so they have a bit more stretch as they curve around your body. Now that they're all cut out, sew together your front panel and the first two of the side panels. This will create one big panel. There you go. Make sure to do this on both the front and the back, but don't put them together just yet. That is yet to come. Now that they're all sewn together, you can take them to your iron and press them flat. Make sure to open up the seam allowance and press that flat against the material, otherwise it's going to cause some troubles later. Now that your seam allowances are flat and out of the way, you can sew them to the material just to keep them really, really flat for our next bit of the adventure. Next we're going to create our busk. Now a busk is normally made of one solid piece of wood or sturdy material. But I didn't have that at home, so I used 4 popsicle sticks, these big ones that I got, I don't even know from where, and I glued them together with some E6000, and then I got a little bit of hard plastic from just a container and glued that over the top to make sure that they wouldn't separate. This is going to serve as all of the structure and the integrity of the middle of the front piece. Now I was going to show you how I sewed the channels to put this busk into the corset. However, I've deleted that footage, so here's a diagram. You take your 2 pieces of fabric, make sure that they're wrong sides together, sew 2 parallel vertical lines into the fabric that's going to fit your busk snugly in between in the tube you've just made. Make sense? Not really? Oh well. There's many more channels to come later in this project, so I'll explain it better to you then. But what you're seeing now is roll pinning. So I found out about roll pinning because I made a mock-up of a corset and it was really, really wrinkly. And I was like, why? I don't understand. Anyways, so how you can help with your wrinkles, if you take your outer layer and your inner layer and roll them over the top of something curved. I'm just using a shampoo bottle here. And it helps the two pieces of fabric come together in a three-dimensional way rather than just a flat way. I'll try and draw a diagram here. So what you've got is your two pieces of material that are flat. Now, if it was going to be a flat surface like a curtain, that would be fine, but because your body is not flat, we've got to make them round. Now, the two things that will happen if you sew them together flat and then try and make it round is either the bottom layer is going to crumple and the top layer will remain correct. Or what happened to me, the bottom layer remained correct, but the top layer stretched and left big wrinkles. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to force two things that are the same angle to go over the top of each other, and that's not going to work. What you need to do is have one be a bit smaller and then one be a bit bigger to go over the top, and that's why I roll pin. Keeping in mind, we only really have to do this on the side panels, not the front or back, because they're pretty flat. Hopefully that helps in any kind of way. So what you have to do is, while you've draped your fabric over the top of your cylindrical object, you pin around the seam allowance and then sew that shut. So your object will now sit really lumpy on a flat surface like a book, but it will look beautiful over a curved surface like a shampoo bottle or your body. Aha, more channels, just like I promised. And you can even see the channel lines from the busk down the center of this piece. So if you're confused about that whole situation, go back and listen to that part of the video with an image from this piece of material. So what I've gone and done is I have marked 12 lines from the waistline point going down my corset to create 10 different channels. I've marked them 4 centimeters apart and at a 45-degree angle. You can use this channeling, cording, boning technique anywhere you think that might need a little bit more structure in your garment. I also added 2 extra smaller bones in the front and 2 other bones right at the back join where the lacing is going to go, just to make sure that that sits really flat. For my boning, I've decided to use some zip ties that are about 4 mils thick. They worked really well. Just make sure you round off the tops and bottoms so they don't end up poking through your material. Next up, we gotta fill those channels with something. So I've used cord. Cording instead of boning was really, really popular in the 1830s, which is when I have tried to emulate as much as I possibly can for this particular set of stays. It's just going to help stiffen up everything without being too rigid. Now your channels are all full of your cording and everything's looking really nice. Just quickly do a line of stitches along the ends of the channels just to seal them off. I planned to hand sew this, but then I got lazy. So machine sew it is. Oh my gosh, so exciting. It was at this point things really started to come together when I decided it's time to sew all of my panels together into the one big corset shape. Now of course there are bits we haven't made yet, so this is just the general around the waist corsetry shape, but it's really starting to come together. And now I suggest you go to bed, like I did. Good morning! Now it's time to hand sew yourself into another dimension. So what we're going to begin with is taking a piece of ribbon. We're going to go around the top edge of the inside of the corset and just seal off all of those edges. When you're done with that, take another piece of ribbon, folding it over the bottom of the corset, this time both over the back and front of the corset, and sew that down to hide all of our shoddy edges there as well. When you're finished with that, I would strongly recommend that you choose a design that you think you can embroider onto the front, just to give your stays a nice bit of personality. I've chosen these little leaves made out of just dots of thread. It was fairly easy to do. It did take a long time, but I'd say it's very worth it. Wouldn't you agree? I would also very strongly recommend that you watch some other historical videos while you do this part. Karolina Żebrowska was what I decided to watch. She had a video on the history of corsets, which felt appropriate. So if you want some more context to historical corsets and stays, I will link that video below. Enjoy your hand sewing! Alrighty, now it's time to measure out our grommet holes. Is the grommet the hardware or the hole? Our holes where our lacing for our corset part is going to go. I chose to mark out 12 evenly spaced spots on each side because I thought that was a nice number and I wanted them to be fairly closely spaced. So there's not going to be too much tugging or pulling on any specific part of the stays. So now what I'm doing is I've taken an awl and I've poked a little hole through my corset, and I have done that a couple of times. And then I'm taking my thread and I am hand sewing a circle around that hole to keep it open. So I've gone around the outside and then put the needle back through the center without catching any threads, and back around the outside again. Just keeping on looping so that hole is pulled open by the threads. Now that your holes are all there, it's time to lace it. I used a crochet hook to pull my ribbon through. It made it so much easier. Would recommend. And it also, I thought it was going to catch all the threads, but it didn't. So start up the top of your corset and then pull them through the holes from the inside of the corset to the outside, and then cross over, pulling them back into the corset on the other side, and then repeat the process. Cross over, pull it through the top, cross over, pull it through the bottom. Really look up a proper tutorial on how to lace a corset. It's a little tricky, but generally speaking, you want to make your crosses really nice, have a few up the top, and then when you get to the center of your corset, or more than the center, your waist point, you want to leave your threads, your ribbons, on the same side and loop them through the next hole, leaving a lot of ribbon free for you to use to pull your corset shut. There's heaps and heaps and heaps of really great lacing corset methods and videos on YouTube and all around, so I would strongly recommend you look up a dedicated video for this part because it's pretty hard. I had to give it a couple of attempts before I got the result I wanted. Alright, with all of your base garment done, it is time to make the all-important shoulder pieces for your stays. Otherwise it's just a corset, it's not stays. How silly would that be? So what I did is I cut 4 equal strips of my outer or fashion fabric. I sewed them in pairs down the long edge of it, leaving the 2 short ends completely open, so then we can turn it inside out to give us our lovely clean seams. Press them completely flat and then sew around the outside, and you've got some beautiful looking shoulder pieces. And then you can go ahead and sew them to the second to back panel, where there should be a nice flat top for you to attach your shoulder pieces. And then on the end of your shoulder panel that has remained loose, get out your awl and make another ribbon hole in the tip of it, just like you did on the back panels. Draping that over your shoulders, do a corresponding ribbon hole on the bodice where it sits really nicely, and then you're done! Somehow you made it here. You made it to the end of the video. I hope you learned something, even if that's just what not to do. Because I feel like that's probably all you could probably have learned from that. Yeah, I made some stays. I'm super happy with how they turned out, especially seeing as this is my first ever historical sewing project. And I don't know. I'm happy. I'm happy. Are you happy? You feeling good? Need a cup of tea? Coffee? Oh wait, you're not yet. I don't know how to end this. End.